A perfect storm of several problems is decimating the world food supply. It's being called the biggest food crisis since World War II. An estimated 285 million people face starvation.
Thousands of farmers have been taken to the streets of Sri Lanka for weeks to protest a ban on imports of chemical fertilizer.
Protesters clashed with riot police in several cities around the country, burning tires, looting, blocking highways. The rising cost of living is affecting many Peruvians. Rocketing fuel prices have directly impacted the basic food basket.
The president has forgotten the poor people. Everything is expensive. He should put on his pants and govern well.
For months, tens of thousands of farmers have taken to the streets in India. Protests have at times been violent. More than 200 farmers have died. They began after the government introduced 3 new laws aimed at liberalizing trade. Protesters, largely Sikh, are worried about their livelihood, what will happen to government-controlled markets and minimum price guarantees. Those aren't mentioned in the new laws.
The Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture, led by its chairman Aden Haji, faced the wrath of frustrated farmers who demanded explanation over the shortage of government-subsidized fertilizer.
Around 70,000 people took to the streets in Prague to protest against the Czech government. The protest was dubbed Czech Republic in the first place. Our protesters highlighted issues being faced by the country.
Dozens of mannequins hung from nooses from trees in Paris as the protesters highlighted the issue of rising farmer suicides in France.
But food prices have already risen steadily over the past year as global demand has struggled to keep up with COVID-19 disruptions, and the Russian invasion puts enormous pressure on the entire global supply chain, which significantly impacts New Zealand.
In Holland, farmers have taken to the streets and driven their tractors into the capital, The Hague, of Holland, to protest reductions in fertilizer use, an attempt to control the amount of nitrogen oxide in the soil, in livestock waste, ammonia, through the practice of farming and ranching. Dutch farmers are worried these policies will put them out of business.
A village in the Dutch province of Gelderland in central Netherlands, thousands of farmers have assembled, protested against the government's far-reaching plans to cut nitrogen emissions. This is one of the largest ever demonstrations by the farmers. They're driving in with their tractors, blowing horns and causing widespread traffic chaos. The Dutch farmers are demanding the scrapping of recently announced plans by the Hague-based government.
Farmers blocked the Pan-American highway to protest against the threefold increase in fertilizer prices. The government says fertilizers, fuel and grains imports from Russia and Ukraine have shot up because of the war.
25% of the global supply disappearing overnight. Naturally, there will be consequences. Which countries will be the worst hit? Let me show you this list. Egypt is the biggest wheat importer in the world. Turkey is second, Bangladesh is third, next comes Nigeria, Yemen, Azerbaijan and the Sudan. Also on this list are Libya, Lebanon and Tunisia. Do you see the trend? Wheat is not imported by affluent powers, it is bought by the developing world. And if there is a supply gap, these countries will suffer.
Their paddy fields look lush and green, but in reality these farmers are struggling. On May 6 last year, they were forced to go organic overnight, and their production has plummeted since.
I am very sad that poor people are facing huge problems now.
Kumara Megastana lost his job as a construction worker after prices of cement skyrocketed. All he and his family have is a few paddy fields to feed themselves. By buying expensive fertilizer on the black market, he hopes to increase production.
I'm working so hard, but it feels as if it is all for nothing. The government gave us organic fertilizer, but it's not good. With good fertilizer, we got a lot of rice, but now it's just a fraction. Before I bought good fertilizer, my harvest went down with 50%.
Let's just talk about Afghanistan. 98% of the population do not have enough food to eat. 98%, 1 million children under the age of 5 could die from malnutrition by the end of this year.
The wealthiest nation faces a food crisis, according to Nigerian agri-investor Imal Silva, who told us a majority of Nigerians face malnutrition.
Those that are most affected are the majority in the lower and middle class, in the society. Those that were living below a particular level of income would feel the pinch, and that's quite a large majority.
And Beasley warns the world's food crisis could spiral into a political crisis.
You got catastrophe coming to catastrophe, so don't be surprised if you don't see destabilization in several nations over the next 6 to 9 months.
Professor Marambe was sacked as a government advisor after he had warned the import ban was a recipe for disaster.
It's a man-made disaster, very unfortunately. It's too late, but still we have some hope that we are in the correct path. This is not going to say organic agriculture is bad. I mean, nobody should get that impression, right? They are all parallel lines, but we are looking at countries' food security, not a food security of a small group of people.
We're facing the biggest food crisis of modern human times, according to Federated Farmers.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine is having many ripple effects, but aside from the loss of life, the impact on food supply and costs around the world and here is expected to be one of the worst.
The largest food crisis that's faced modern human existence.
Now, farmers are warning our food supply could take the next major hit.
Experts say the world food supply is now at risk thanks to a shortage in fertilizer. Let's connect the dots. Several reasons are to blame for the shortage. Continuing supply chain issues don't help. But in recent months, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as well as high natural gas prices, are also to blame. Not only is fertilizer hard to come by, but in some cases, prices for ingredients have nearly tripled since the start of the pandemic.
The cost of nitrogen fertilizer is rising while the U.S. economy is taking hits. The high demand is driving food prices up, and farmers are worried about what the future holds for them.
Russia and Ukraine together produce almost 1/3 of the world's wheat. But Ukrainian farmers have been sidelined by the war, and Russia has banned exports.
Russia and China have also curbed the exports of urea, which is used as a raw material for nitrogen fertilizer production. China has declared that they will cut down on the export of fertilizer until June of 2022. When asked why they're taking such a decision at a time when fertilizer is of the utmost need and urea is like gold, China had to say that they were also concerned about the worldwide shortage of nitrogen fertilizer, but due to the impending food security concerns, they had to ensure that fertilizer was domestically available as China hosts around 1.402 billion people of its own. Following China's policy, Russia made sure to impose restrictions on the exports of nitrogen and phosphate fertilizer for more than 6 months.
Look at this. Up there in yellow, Trudeau has decided to move forward with his cap on nitrogen emissions by reducing fertilizer use, even as provincial agricultural ministers beg him to stop.
It is unfortunate to say that nitrogen fertilizer is seeing a global shortage due to the high demand and the low supply. Due to the soaring prices, hardworking North American farmers are trying to delay the purchase of nitrogen fertilizer till the price goes down.
farmers are facing a fertilizer shortage, making fertilizer nearly double the cost of what it used to be, according to Young.
So in a normal year, usually about a ton of fertilizer costs us $400 to $500, maybe $600. Some of those have gone up to $1,000. Some are $1,200 right now.
John, you mentioned the cost of fertilizers. I know you know the numbers. I don't know if our audience really knows, unless they're a farmer, the impact on the farming community. Look at these numbers. Some fertilizers have gone up 200%. Others have nearly tripled in price.
Sales of nitrogen fertilizer were at a global high of $53 billion in 2020. Prices have been 80% higher than before, which is worrying farmers and economists. The delay of fertilizer purchases up until spring has very high risk. It risks the supply chain congestion, as farmers will hurry to apply fertilizer in plants in what is a very small time frame. While everyone tries to scramble for fertilizer and get it on their crops, it's highly likely that some people's crops will go uncovered, causing hard-working farmers time, effort, and patience to go down the drain.
The high cost of fertilizer and lime and all of these upfront costs for America's farmers, and we haven't done anything in place to fix that. Well, I tell you right now, farming is the hardest occupation known to man. It never stops. It's 7 days a week, and it's the only occupation, people, that's not Republican, it's not Democrat. That dirt on the ground, that soil that I farm every day, doesn't ask me what color I am, what I look like. It just asks, can I farm and raise that commodity?
Now, you are an environmentalist. I've known you for 10, 20 years. You're an environmentalist, and you do believe that humans have caused some warming of the planet. That's where you're coming from on this.
Yes, absolutely. So look, global warming is a real problem, but the way it's being exaggerated to such an extent that it's almost extreme partly makes us forget all the other problems in the world. Remember, right now, about 1 billion people are going to go hungry, partly because we don't have enough fertilizer. Fertilizer is made from gas, but the EU is now saying, no, we don't want to help poor people with more fertilizer because it's going to use fossil fuels. That's just immoral.
Killing, at the very least, reducing the lifespan and then killing the population of the poorest. That's why you'll see that first in Albania and in Sri Lanka, where you're looking at food shortages, farmers going out of business, runaway inflation. That will lead to the loss of human life. And if you're okay with that, because, hey, the world's more sustainable, it's greener, then your policies are not just ignorant of history and not just a power grab, but your policies are anti-human.
We will not eat bugs.
And my question today is, have you been to the supermarket lately and looked at these food prices? We have to find a way to invest in infrastructure for farmers and put farmers first and put more small-scale farmers back into business.
We're going to need fossil fuels for a long time to come. So how would you tackle this? What should we be doing here?
We should recognize that even on current promises, if everyone kept their current climate promises, the International Energy Agency estimate we'll still be using more than half of our energy from fossil fuels in 2050. We're not going to, as you say, fix this anytime soon. What we need to do is to dramatically ramp up investment in green energy and R&D, because if we could innovate the next set of clean green energy that would actually be cheaper than fossil fuel, we would have solved global warming. Everyone would switch, not just rich, well-meaning Americans. So there's a lot of people who are realizing the current approach is not working. Maybe we should try another one that'll work better and cost less.